Let's get back to this incredible piece of history that's unfolding in London. At 11:22 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, the procession to Westminster Palace will begin. The Queen's coffin will be put on a gun carriage, as we heard earlier from Jonathan Lee. Then the King and other family members will walk behind it as it's taken down the Mall. Guns will fire from Hyde Park and Big Ben will toll on the 38-minute trip, which will pass through the Horse Guards Parade and Whitehall. After a short ceremony, the Queen will lie in state for 4 days at Westminster Hall. 24 hours a day, that hall will be open to accommodate the crowds lining up to file through and pay their personal respects. Palace officials estimate 750,000 people will queue to see the Queen's coffin in that way, with a wait time of up to 30 hours even after they get going. Tim Ewart is the former royal editor with the independent television network in the UK, and he joins me again live from London. Tim, this is still extraordinary to see this unfold. What struck me, and I spoke about at the top of the program, was the incredible patience and determination and forbearance of those loyal citizens, royalists, sitting out there through the night waiting to pay their respects.
You know, Chris, we talk a lot about the end of the age of deference, and we've seen huge crowds at royal events before in happier times. But each time, I remember covering the wedding of William and Kate a few years ago and saying at that time, well, there'll be big crowds, but they won't be as big as they were for the last royal wedding. We're proved wrong every time. The British public always turns out in huge numbers for these events, and the weather overnight in London has been appalling. So not only are people waiting in line for up to 30 hours, as you say, that line will stretch a long way back along the River Thames. It's quite extraordinary. And also people are already camping out on the Mall, which is the road that runs down from the front of Buckingham Palace. They're already camping out there to see the funeral procession, which is next Monday. So it really is quite extraordinary.
It is, and that sort of loyalty, that sort of dedication is just impossible to imagine. Although you would suspect that then at some time, whether it's later today or sometime in the next few days, some of the royals you would think would go out and visit some of these people who are waiting in line. I would have thought that's the sort of common touch, that sort of gratitude that might be expressed at some stage, obviously unplanned at this stage.
I think you're probably right. I mean, we've seen evidence of this already from the new king, King Charles. I mean, members of the royal family will once again today be sharing their private grief with the public when they walk behind the Queen's coffin in that procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall. Is going to take 38 minutes, be led by the King. William and Harry will be there, other senior members of the royal family, and Kate and Meghan will be following, but in cars. So once again, the private grief has to become public, which I think is not easy for them, but they will not be lacking in sympathy from the crowds, that's for sure.
Tell us about King Charles III and his temperament. We know it's an incredibly taxing week, a personally traumatic one as well, but we saw him getting all snippy about signing the date on the wrong day and a pen leaking, apparently. Is this the personality trait that's going to be a problem for him, or is this just a sign of the stresses of this week?
Well, it's uncharitable, I suppose, at this point, really, to be too critical of the king. But it is no secret that he can be petulant, that he can be ill-tempered. And I think we have to be charitable and say that at the pressure that he's under at the moment, this was just another incident which caused him to blow his top, which he did. I think it's also a reminder to him and to everybody else in public life is that the world now is almost always watching. Those
yes.
cameras that were in that ceremony, this was in Belfast yesterday, those cameras are left on. This is how he got caught out, you may remember, with the awful man incident many years ago when on a ski trip to Europe, when he criticised one of my former colleagues who'd asked him a question. They just have to be really careful. Everybody, as I've said, I think to you before, everybody now is a paparazzo. Everybody's taking their cameras out and recording everything. He just has to be really careful.
He sure does. Thanks again for joining us, Tim. Appreciate it. Tim Ewart there, the former royal editor at ITN. And don't forget, 11:22, we know that precisely. That is when the cortege will start leaving Buckingham Palace and heading down the Mall in what is going to be the next significant event of this funereal week.